Things happen when you're young and you don't feel them. You don't allow yourself to experience the emotions that go with that. So you carry around with you either unfelt sadness or unfelt anger that you have to get out, not by going and doing something sinful and mean to somebody, but you have to process it. And most of us, if you're a Christian, you think, oh, that's wrong to be angry. But it's like, no, like I got a punching bag the other day. And my Christian therapist said, I want you to picture Jesus holding it.
Well, hey crew, it's Adam. This is The Conversation. I am so excited that you are tuning in. I cannot believe it, but we are now at episode 250, 250 episodes of The Conversation. I'm just speechless by it. To all of you who have listened on a regular basis from the deepest place inside of me, I am so grateful for you. I am truly honored that I've had the ability to speak into each of your lives. Today, though, I have several things to let you know. First off, we have an amazing guest on The Conversation, Patrick Lencioni. You're not going to want to miss this conversation. Secondly, starting today, we will now have the full conversations, every episode, the full episode, both at YouTube and also at Pando. And so if you want to watch each episode, if you want to get the entire episode instead of the kind of cut down 28-minute version, go check it out on my YouTube channel at Adam A. Weber. I'm so incredibly excited about this change. And so that's the second thing. Last thing, to celebrate today's milestone of 250 episodes, we are giving away 5 copies of the book, The Working Genius, by today's guest, by Patrick Lencioni. This book is phenomenal. Our team here at Embrace actually went through The Working Genius. It's a fantastic read. To win one of these 5 copies, all you need to do is 2 simple things. First off, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Again, that's Adam A. Weber. Just go subscribe. That's the first thing. Second thing, just let me know that you went to my YouTube channel and subscribed. You can leave a comment on my YouTube with the word done. You can send a direct message to me with the word done. You can send an email to me with the word done, and you'll be entered for a chance to win one of these 5 copies. Today, though, friends, wherever you are, I'm so excited you're tuning in. My hope each week is if you're trying to figure out how to make a difference with your life, or you're walking through an unpretty part of being human, I want you to know that you are not alone. Well, before we go any further, I want to give a huge shout out to our partners. Each week, these partners help make the conversation possible. Genuinely, I would not be able to do these conversations without these partners. Our first partner is Vern Eide. Vern Eide Motor Cars is a faith-based, employee-owned company that sells cars, trucks, tractors, boats, and so much more. They sell Hondas, Fords, Acuras, Chevys, GMC. You name a make of vehicle, and they most likely have it. I've purchased my last 2 vehicles from Vern Eide, and I'm in the process right now of getting my 3rd vehicle from them. I honestly will not look anyplace else, no matter what kind of vehicle you're looking for, and no matter where you live, they will ship it to you. Go check out verneide.com. Again, that's verneide.com. Our second partner is an incredible organization called the International Justice Mission. Friends, it's hard to think or imagine, but people living in poverty are uniquely vulnerable than most people. Every day, they're at risk of violence, trafficking, slavery, violence against women, violence against children. Well, this is where IJM steps in. IJM works closely with these people to rescue them out of this violence and modern day slavery, taking special care of survivors from the moment they are rescued all the way through their healing. To do this, they partner with local authorities to help rescue people from these unimaginably terrible situations. I cannot encourage you enough. Please go visit ijm.org. They have a special section where you can pray and find out specific prayer needs, and I just want to encourage you to do that. Again, ijm.org. Well, today we are celebrating episode 250 of The Conversation, and to do so, I invited one of my all-time favorite guests back on, Patrick Lencioni. Pat is one of the most well-known leadership experts in the world, and that's not an overstatement. And today, Pat and I, we talk about how to find joy in our lives when it doesn't come naturally, how important it is for all of us to go see a Christian therapist, and how to know when to say yes to things, and how to know when to say no to things. Friends, whether you you lead a large team or you're on a team of one, I hope you're deeply impacted by this conversation. And on that note, as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation. So this is episode 250 of the conversation. That's right. And I was thinking about it. I've had so many great interviews. Ones that jumped out to me as like personal favorites is my interview with Jon Acuff. We interviewed 2 weeks later. He was in Sioux Falls and he's like, I never do this. Would you want to grab coffee with me? Because I'd love to grab coffee with you. And I'm like, that's a yes. I'm going to take a yes on that. I thought of JB Brown, the sportscaster. If JB, I mean, it was an interview. He was at home, ended up introduced me to his wife and preached a message basically for 40 minutes, which was delightful. Lisa Bevere is just a dear friend that I love so much. But when I thought about it, Pat, the time with you was just such an unexpected gift. It was like, I was excited about the interview, but it felt like more than that. It felt like I felt closer to Jesus by the end of our time together. And so it's a huge honor to have you on today. And I'm just so grateful for you.
Thank you, Adam. I'm looking forward to this. This is a joy.
So I'm going to start with some, just a couple of personal questions and then kind of transition to leadership. So one of the things that I've been focusing on personally over the last 4 or 5 months is joy, and specifically really enjoying each day. I tend to treat myself naturally like a robot without a soul, and it's just like go, 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 and I feel like that's caught up with me. So maybe 2 parts to this question. Is joy something that's natural for you? And I feel, we talked about this last time, and just some shifts in your relationship with Jesus, but even away from that, is joy something that's natural for you, and have you found anything that's been helpful to increase your joy?
So joy is not natural for me, and there's reasons for that. So I've come to realize recently that I grew up in a very performative situation where I felt like I had to work for attention and affirmation because of various dysfunction. And I didn't know that. That's one of the reasons why I did really well in school and in sports and everything else, because I was terrified not to. And so actually, joy was not my aspiration. It was relief from fear. And so joy was not something, in fact, I was in a meeting with somebody 2 days ago and they said, hey, do you think you can think back to your childhood? Do you remember any moments of joy? And I said, I don't know what that exactly is, because I think I was so afraid that mostly what I was aspiring to was just relief.
Whoa.
And so the answer to the second part of your questions are, for me, in this case, the things that I need to do is I need to heal from that. I need to get to the place where I can feel safe enough to feel joy. Because right now, and I've gone to some wonderful Christian counselors, and I've got to break out of the fear part before I can begin to aspire to joy. Because otherwise, and I'm working on that right now, and it is heavy and hard, but it's great, and always better to do it now than never. But I look back and I think much of my life was driven by fear of avoiding failure and just disintegration, if you will.
Oh, okay. That's good.
That probably wasn't the answer.
No, that's exactly what I was looking for. Practically wise, you mentioned therapy. Is there any other thing that you would say has been helpful to make that shift to joy? That's so good, Pat. My goodness.
With therapy, prayer, of course. I mean, deep prayer. And that's even a challenge sometimes when you didn't grow up feeling joy, because it's like, am I entitled to this? Do you smile at me, God, or are you kind of down on me because I need to do more? And then I try to go to Mass. I'm Catholic. Like, I'm going to try to make it to Mass at noon today, to go to the Eucharist, receive the Eucharist, and just be with Jesus. And that's, I have moments when I'm in church by myself and I'm like, oh, here it is, God. I mean, like, he'll flood me. But it's hard to keep. So.
That's good. And you kind of already answered it. My second question, wounds. Last time we talked about wounds, and The amount of people who came up to me after the interview with you, Pat, was just it blew me away. Has there been any other aha moments with healing from wounds in the past? And again, you kind of went there a little bit, but any other aha moments or anything there? Because I just know that's been something you've been kicking around.
Well, and I'm going to write a book about this because I want to write an on-ramp book. There's other people that know wounds and wound therapy and all that stuff, but a lot of people out in the world don't even understand like how to access that. And so I want to make it simple for people to go, oh, that's what you mean by wounds. And for me, and for most people I talk to, every executive I says, hey, I got some of those. Some are really deep, some are not. But the idea is things happen when you're young and you don't feel them. You don't allow yourself to experience the emotions that go with that. So you carry around with you either unfelt sadness or unfelt anger that you have to get out, not by going and doing something sinful and mean to somebody, but you have to process it. And most of us, if you're a Christian, you think, oh, that's wrong to be angry. But it's like, no, like I got a punching bag the other day. And my Christian therapist said, I want you to picture Jesus holding it and for you. And when you're punching out of anger at stuff that happened to you as a kid, I know this sounds very soft and touchy-feely, but it's not, because it makes you feel better. It's okay to punch that bag. It's okay to be pissed off, not to call somebody and get mad at them because they have wounds too. But you've got to go back and process those emotions, let them out so that you can live a life of freedom. That's the word I'm looking for, is like, I want to be free of this stuff. So most people, they hear that and they go, oh yeah, I've got stuff I never dealt with. Yeah, if I dealt with that, I would live a life of freedom, joy, peace. And everybody wants that. But we often can't do it just because we got this stuff we never dealt with. And sometimes it's small. Sometimes you might need 2 weeks of that. Sometimes you might need, I'm on year 4 and it's making a difference. But man, some days are like, I'll say should I have just not started this? And they're like, oh, no, you are so much better than you used to be, but it's a process.
Oh, thank you for that. So this morning I grabbed coffee. I'm going to shout out my friend Jason Van Ruler, who's somebody you need to cross paths with, Pat. Just an amazing therapist that is really gaining just a ton of momentum in his career in a really cool way. But we grabbed coffee, and he's just a friend. I go to somebody else for therapy because I'm like, can we just stay friends? And he's like, yep. And I was sharing about an irrational fear I had. Like, he's like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I just can't stop thinking about this one thing. And he's like, what's that connected to? And I said, before I answered, I'm like, I don't think I want to be your friend anymore. I was like, oh my gosh. And 2 seconds later, I'm in Starbucks. This morning, crying. And
there it is.
I'm like, no way. He's like, you don't think those 2 things are connected? And I'm like, oh my gosh.
So I will tell you what's going on with me this week. And this is my big thing. And this came from when I was a kid. So when you have these really hurtful things when you're young and you're too young to deal with it, what we do is we distract by trying to control other things in our lives. Like, so I grew up with serious OCD. I wasn't diagnosed till I was 25. But I mean, I had it horribly. I mean, you wouldn't believe the things I did. Well, I just thought, well, I have OCD. No, that's because you're trying to control things in a life where you don't have control and you're afraid. And whether it's the number of times I touch something or how I line up the pencil in my room or whatever, and I had a million of them, it's all about getting some control in a world where you're pretty afraid. Well, what happens now, and this is just this week, is I'm starting to feel anxious and afraid about all that stuff when I was young, but I attach it to something going on in my adult life, which is not the problem at all. So I'm like, and I'm feeling crazy and ashamed, like to my wife, I'm like, why am I so worried about that thing over there? Isn't that stupid? And she's like, yeah, it's because it's not that at all. It's about the core stuff, but you're thinking, if I only can fix that, I'll be fine. Now I'm going, why do I care about these stupid things? It's like, because I'm trying to distract from the core. There's my therapy. That's if you heard that last sentence, you can play it again and again. That was 4.5 years of therapy. It's just hard to do it every day and remember.
Oh my God.
You can relate to that.
Yeah. So last night I was worrying about what I ended up sharing with Jason this morning. And my wife, I didn't tell her I was worrying. She's like, what are you worrying about? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, you just asked this child of ours to clean up this. You just asked your daughter to clean her bedroom, and you randomly are organizing stuff on the counter, and our house is clean. Will you stop whatever is going on? And I'm like, I didn't even realize it. Like, she called it out, and I'm like, oh, hey, you know what I mean? It was a really, she did so in a very gentle, kind way, but it was really the Lord calling it out of like, hey, Adam, what are you trying to do? And how about you just bring that to me? Whatever's going on inside of you, like just stop.
Right.
Because it's not helping.
And I'll say this, that Jesus is the healer. And by the way, I had OCD when I was 25. I went to so many therapists who never talked about faith and about God and about who I was, because most of them were atheists, or better yet, probably just pretty secular agnostics. And I finally asked one of them, Adam, because I had OCD, and they were just treating the symptom of OCD. Why do you touch why do you count the number of things? Why do you do these things in your head? And it's funny, I finally said to one guy after I stopped working with him, because I'd done enough, I said, hey, I have a question for you. I told you my story of my faith, and you never asked me any questions about it. And I will be honest, I felt like he was like, well, that's part of the problem, probably. And I said, so in the last appointment, I said, tell me what your thoughts are on that. And you know what he said? He said, Pat, I went to school to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and they prepared me to deal with everyone. Every kind of person you can imagine, every kind of issue, every kind of demographic, except Christians.
Whoa.
That we never talked about. That is no accident, Adam, because the thing is, and I mean this, Jesus is the healer.
Yeah.
And when we're trying to do this without the love of God, you can't possibly diagnose and heal.
Yeah.
And that's why I think if I were 22 years old, I would probably want to go into the field of Christian psychology, because there's all kinds of important things that are psychological, but they have to be based around the fact that we are made in the image and likeness of God, and he wants to heal us. Jesus said, be healed all the time. And it was to draw, I think healing is what is in our lives is what draws us closer and closer to God. And so the fact that guy said, the one group of people we never talked about was Christians, blew me away.
Whoa, that's powerful. Last personal question. I feel like the older I get, so I'm 41, soon to be 42, older I get, the more I realize I need mentors. And yet it can be harder to find them. Some that have stepped into the next life. So my question, and there's no right or wrong answer, do you still have mentors today? And my mentors are so many different people. Jim Lake, he owns a car dealership in Sioux Falls, incredible man. Rick Melmer,
awesome.
Mary Weber, like all these different mentors in different areas. Do you currently have mentors and any advice for someone 41, soon to be 42 when it comes to mentors?
Well, so it's a great question, and I think I in many ways I would say no, which bums me out. But then when you think about it, like your mentors aren't like, this is a guru sitting on a hill and a famous person. I think what I'm finally finding is that I can be mentored by extremely ordinary people in my life who are extraordinary in certain ways, and I guess I read some books, and I know a lot of wonderful, famous, thoughtful people.
Yep.
But what I'm finding is that it's the ordinary person who is really sound. It's harder and harder to be mentored by somebody who's well-known and super successful, because oftentimes I feel like they share some of the wounds I have, because most of us who are trying to achieve, it's not that we're motivated completely by pride, it's fear. And so I have this group of guys that come into my office. Tonight's Thursday, they'll come into my office. And it's the first time I've ever done like a men's group. We call it a Bible study. It's not a Bible study because it's not studying the Bible. We read the Bible, but we talk. They are having a greater impact on me. I never knew these guys that were in my life. We just never got together intentionally to talk about what we're going through. So I'm developing mentors, and some are much younger than me. That's the thing. Like you're 41, you said.
Yep.
I don't see it that way. You know, the pastor at my church is 34 years old. I consider him, and I asked him the other day, I said, hey, Father Matthew, do you think it's weird that me, a 58-year-old man, actually cares what you think and wants to, and he goes, yeah, it's kind of hard for me to understand. And I got tears in my eyes and I said, I want to be better in the way you want me to be better. And I realized I don't see him as a 34-year-old. I see him as a person who spends his life close to Jesus, and I need his help. So I think when I took age out of it and like public persona out of it, I realized there are mentors all around me, and God didn't say it's always going to be an old man on a hill, you know. So
there's the good stuff right there. Man, that might say more about you, Pat, than anything that you said. Like just that heart of humility, and which I would say is heart of humility that comes from maturity. To be able to say something like that, and gosh, that was so good. It's kind of shift into leadership questions. One of my greatest current challenges is trying to do way too many things at one time. And a younger version of me would have been like, this is like a source of, I would have never.
Superpower.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, like you're leaning into my strong suit. Well, you got a lot to do. Well, I'm your person because my one strong suit is my work ethic. Now I'm beginning to see it not as a source of pride, but a source of foolishness. Like genuinely, like this is foolish. I don't even know where to go. What do I do? I mean, and it feels like and you know this more than anybody, the more success, I'm putting that in quotes, you have, the more opportunities and the more you have to juggle. What do you do? And yeah, what do you do?
Well, you know, Adam, I think that worldliness is an interesting thing because we tend to think worldliness is like greed and pornography and all these, and it is. But worldliness is also these things that we think are pragmatic or practically good, that like multitasking is what the world says, man, that's a great thing. I learned something from my son, Matthew, who you were talking to before. I'm even learning from my kids. And he talked about like the power of solo tasking. Like if you're doing the dishes, sometimes just be present in doing the dishes. There's a guy you might have heard named Brother Lawrence.
Love him.
Who wrote. Yeah.
Love him.
And so he was this Catholic monk who said, if I'm doing the smallest task, I'm going to do it for God. But we tend to go, oh, this task is beneath me. So while I'm doing it, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And it drives us crazy. So I'm trying to learn how to be present in little things. But let me tell you, I'm so tempted to go accomplish 4 things at once, which really just robs me of peace and the presence of God. So the genius, the superpower of solo tasking is what we should probably be pursuing.
Isn't that good? How do you decide what to do and what not to do? Because again, so many opportunities are coming your way. And even if you can like try to backtrack even 10, 15, 20 years ago, like if you could go back, like how do you decide what to do? And because I want to make a difference and I want to have impact with my life. And so that's where I get, what does a person do?
You know, it's so funny because there's a friend of my wife's named Patty, and a friend of mine too, a dear woman. And she said one day something so simple. Everybody's like, where their kids are getting out of college, like, what do you want to do? And so we're constantly asking people that question. And she just said, isn't the answer like, what does God want me to do? I mean, because truly, honestly, if God, like my family is moving from California to Tennessee, we've prayed about it, we're doing that. But if and when my wife Laura and I, she's a convert, she's a person of great faith, and so when we have to make a decision, she just goes, God, please show me, because I want to know what you want. And so, but how often do we go, yeah, God, I want to know what you want, but let me figure this out. And the truth is, if God wanted me to move to Libya tomorrow, and I knew that were the case, I would want to move to Libya. I mean, I'd want to do his will. And so oftentimes when people say, well, how do you decide what to work on? The truth is, over the years, Adam, I didn't take it to prayer. I mean, we say we do, and I am open to that, but man, do I spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. Pros, cons, and all these other things. And sometimes I just have to, I say the rosary. I'm doing it every day during Lent. And the rosary is just, most people that aren't Catholic don't quite understand. What we do is we contemplate the life of Christ while we're saying this prayer and asking Mary to join us in prayer so that we can know. And when I'm praying the rosary, I'm in the shower or I'm exercising, God will flood me with something. And I'm like, I don't know where that came from. So it's oftentimes just submitting and going, I'm going to come before you. I'm going to put this in front of you. But Adam, I'm going to tell you, that's so countercultural to me. I grew up, if I can't figure it out, nobody else will. And that was the wound. I was like, no, nobody else has me. I've got to solve my own problems. That's a dangerous thing. Even if things go well, eventually one day you're like, this is too heavy for me because I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh my goodness. Maybe a similar question, but slightly different. Delegating, like challenges, like any like words of advice on delegating to myself, to anybody, regardless of where they're at in an organization. Any challenges there, like with delegating?
Absolutely. This is a new thing. 5 years ago, I would have given you a different answer. But 3.5 years ago, we came up with this new tool called the Working Genius. And it taught me that God gave me gifts, and those gifts bring me joy and energy, and I happen to be good at them. And so I need to use those to serve others. He also gave me areas that I have no giftedness in. And he does not want me to spend my life. I used to think like, oh, I'm terrible at details. Oh, you know what I should do for God? I should go and be an accountant and just grind the rest of my life because you're supposed to be sad. And it's like, no, that's not how it is. It's like he gives us gifts, and that's his sign. Like, I'm going to let you experience the joy of serving along with me in these areas I gave you. Now, there's areas that I didn't give you gifts in. Delegate those to somebody who would be joyfully glad to do those things. Isn't it crazy? So as it turns out, there's these 6 working geniuses, and now I know that there's 2 areas that crush me.
Oh, yeah.
And I should delegate that as often as I can. Now, I can't delegate it all. Growing up, when my kids were growing up, I had to change their diapers. I had to do things when they asked me to. And that wasn't my gift to be like, yeah. So there's things I got to do, and I learned to love those. But there's so many things that we should outsource in life. God made us to need one another. And when we try to be self-sufficient, we are depriving others of the gift of completing who we are and ourselves of the gift of using God's gifts. So the Working Genius has taught me exactly what I should and can delegate and what I should lean into. And then in those moments when I have to do things I'm not good at, I can offer that up and go, okay, God, I have to grind here for a few hours. Okay, Brother Lawrence, help me just do these dishes and be glad that I can.
I'm so glad you mentioned the Working Genius. We talked about that in the last time we connected. And anybody who's listening, go just search Working Genius with Pat's name and find as much as you can. Purchase the book, like everything. Our team has gone through, we have all staff every Tuesdays, and we have gone through Working Genius, different aspects of it, 3 different times now. And one of the things that's been an aha for me, so I started the church I'm at. I'm 41, and I started when I was 24. And I always would have said that tenacity is my strong suit. I'm beginning to realize, though, I can do it really, really well. And I think I can because I had to for years and years and years and years. But it doesn't bring me joy.
Right.
And now I'm finding myself beginning to strongly dislike or almost view it very, very negatively when I have to. And it's so weird.
Resent it, don't you?
Resent it. Yeah. And again, like if you asked my very first full-time hire, he's still on staff here, one of my closest friends, he would say, you are almost like, you're the best person I know at tenacity. But it's interesting because I'm like, I'm really, really good because I had to. And also, I'll just say the first 3 years of our church, we almost were closed because we weren't growing. And it was so driven out of fear because I love the people that were coming. And I was sad that this church that they loved and I loved might go away. And so that was a huge aha for me. But go, Working Genius, find out more about it.
Well, this is so interesting, and it can be very dangerous this gets right back to the first thing about wounds. So I grew up thinking that my job was to do whatever was asked of me by my parents, coaches, and teachers, and to do it perfectly. Well, you know what my two working frustrations are? My lowest area is enablement, which is do whatever you're told, and tenacity, which is finish things. So I'm going to say, Adam, I was the best of the best at the things I hated.
Oh my God.
Because I was so fearful. So I grow up and people go, well, you're great at that. We'll give you more of that to do. And it was like prison. And I finally failed in a job, thanks be to God, because they hired me to do this detail-oriented, performance-oriented job that was so far from what I loved, but I'd gotten good at it for the wrong reasons. Ugh. And that's why people should look at this, because they're going to look at something and go, oh, I hate this, and people think I like it.
Yeah.
And even in my own company, one of your geniuses is galvanizing. It's your number one. The idea of like rallying the troops, reminding people, making the pitch. That's why you love doing this. It's not one of my geniuses.
Yeah.
But in my company for 25 years, I was the chief galvanizing officer, and I started resenting it. I was coming to work getting kind of pissed off because every day it was like, okay, galvanize us. And I would be like, why do I have to keep doing this? That's how we figured out this tool. Somebody said, why do you get grumpy? Because I love the people I worked with. I loved what I did. And I figured out, there's these 6 kinds of work, and galvanizing is not one of the things I love, and I have to do it all the time. I resented it, and it made me kind of bitter. Now I delegate it. I still have to do some, but I got people that love to galvanize. And if you and I work together, Adam, I'd say, hey, Adam, why don't you get up and lead our meeting? And you go, are you going to let me do that? I go, let you? I'm going to reward you for it, because God gave you that gift. He didn't give it to me. How beautiful is that?
I thought something with the working genius was broken. I was actually going to submit a complaint because tenacity wasn't my top. And so literally I was like, I answered the questions incorrectly. Like there's something that is wrong with the working genius. I broke it. And then the more I sat with it and really began, again, at first I was almost defensive with it. Like, no, that's my top. And I even had other people around me say, tenacity, Adam, right? Talk. And I was like, I think mine was not right and then really, honestly, I don't want to over spiritualize this, but the Holy Spirit began to like, hey, you're really good at that. But is it like what you love? Because it feels like you kind of resent it. And
that's the key to this model. It's about joy and energy, not about performance, because joy and energy leads to performance, but the other will burn you out. So we had a guy do the same thing you did. And he goes, well, it says here I don't have tenacity, but this has to be wrong. We were like, why? And he goes, well, I went to med school. Dude, I'm a doctor. I mean, do you know what med school is like? And somebody on my team said, did you like that? And he was like, no, it was the worst time of my life.
Oh my gosh.
He was like, I had to do it. I made myself do it really well, but it was misery. And he goes, you're right. I don't do that because I want to. I don't do it because I'm good at it. I do it because I have to. And I forced myself to do it well.
Wow. Okay. That is so good. Okay. So for this last section of leadership that I want to get to right now, just several friends are leading an organization, a business, or like myself, a church that either has a ton of momentum behind it and things are it's like a snowball, super exciting, or they have no momentum. You know, the market has shifted for them. The interest rate is different, so that changes and so it's like they're trying to create momentum, and they maybe just had it a couple of years ago, a whole lot, and now they don't. So advice on both sides of that for the leader and also maybe someone on the team. So for me, Embrace, the church I pastor. I can't believe I get to pastor this church. I have no rose-colored glasses left. We're just in a wonderful season. I mean, life change. 2 of our campuses are getting new facilities in the next 4-6 months. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And it's super, super exciting. We've had this momentum in the past. It's super exciting until it's not. And then it's just like, This is overwhelming, and we now do not like this job anymore. thoughts for me as the leader to protect organizational health and in the midst, not for me, we've kind of talked a little bit about for me personally, but how do I as the leader help organizational health in a season of momentum and growth and exciting until it's not?
Okay, I have a couple thoughts about this. Let's start with the most important one, which is faith, which is about Jesus. And St. Paul said, so every morning I listen to the readings from Mass on my computer, on my phone, and at the end of it, it always ends with the same thing. And this is so powerful. The first time I heard it, I was like, oh, this changes everything. And St. Paul said, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, and give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus. So when things are good, give thanks, pray, rejoice. When things are bad, give thanks, pray, and rejoice. And so whatever's going on, go, hey, this is what you have for us right now, God. And if we have just a morsel of bread, let's just be as happy for that morsel as when there's a feast. And let's not write it up or write it down and think the external circumstances are somehow, because that's the problem. We are meant to have peace in difficult times, but that's not a very Western or very worldly thing.
No.
And so if you ride the ups too much and the downs too down, you're letting the world tell you whether you should be happy. And Jesus says, no, I'm with you right now. So that's enough. And so be there. So that'll protect you from that. Now, as far as organizational health goes, if you know why you do what you do, and you know what your values are, and you understand what success looks like for you, and you stick to those things, you don't chase things beyond your core values, and you don't chase things beyond your core purpose, and you don't chase things beyond the strategic anchors that you have, because chasing those things outside of that is pride. It's like, I want more. And if you stay to what God made you to be, because one of the reasons why you guys are growing right now, I'm going to tell you, it's by the grace of God, all of it. And he is blessing you during a time when faith in our country is under attack more than ever. And the church always grows with the seeds of the blood of martyrs. And you live in a place that, compared to other places, is relatively healthy. So you are actually, during a dark time in the world, you guys are in a very light place. Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing.
God is allowing you to be in that place. How awesome is that? Now, there's some guy and some other running a church someplace in the Bay Area where I live. It's like, people are so indifferent to this. I can't even get them to care. Yeah. I have a third of my parish or a third of my congregation now, and the other 1/3 have moved. The other third has run away, and I have a third left. And it's like, even in that, say, hey, God, this dwindling group of people, this is a gift.
That's good.
And so when we can keep that, do our very best. The last thing, I'm talking too much here.
No, this is so good.
I think it was St. Augustine who said, or was it? I think it was St. Augustine who said, pray like it all depends on God and work like it all depends on you. And I used to hate that saying because I thought it sounded like, yeah, pretend it's God, but it's really you. No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying, God, it's all God's work. But work with the same level of diligence. Don't just sit back and go, well, it's not up to me. Do everything you can. And the outcome is not what matters. It's the input. So rejoice not in the fact that you're building a new building. Rejoice in the fact that something is happening that's going to allow you to serve more people. But we as people, I'm not trying to say that you're rejoicing for the wrong reasons, but sometimes we can get caught up in the externals of things.
That's true. That's so good.
To be in the early church in Rome would have been both the best thing imaginable and the most painful, frightening. And yet we're all like, well, I'm so glad I'm living in the United States in the 20th century, in the 1900s, because Christendom was there and it was never, but it's like, no, now it's the 21st century. The persecution of the church is growing. And it's so easy to go, oh, this is awful. It's like, no, God planned for you to be here. He knew you'd be pastoring a church in Sioux Falls. If this is God's will, I'm going to rejoice in it no matter what.
That's so good. Pat, leadership wise, is there anything specific there like that you would say that you didn't answer the question like I thought you would in the best way? Leadership wise, is there anything in a season of great momentum to not just have the snowball take over your team, and then in a season where it's really, really hard leadership wise, how to keep the team moving in the right direction, even when it feels like we are planting these seeds and nothing is happening? I don't know why we're even doing these calls. I don't even know why we're having meetings, because nothing is changing.
Yeah, I think that when things are going really well, live below your means. And that's even not just in your personal life, but like, hey, we're getting all these customers. I think you should be, we call it conservanoid, which is like a little bit conservative, a little bit like, hey, this won't be here like this forever, so let's not get out over our skis. It's good, right? But when things are dry, realize that there's going to be prudent risks, and without prayer, and there are opportunities that come out during dry periods that wouldn't be there otherwise. But you have to step back and go, okay, maybe there's something we're missing here. What is the need out there in the world? And I love that. Like they say in life, you should do where your passion corresponds with the needs of the world. God gives you passions and interests, working genius, I think, and then the world has different needs. Well, when the market's down, people, their needs are just different. There's still needs, and find a way to meet those needs. Because I really do think, like, when a market goes down or things are hard, a lot of people bail, and that presents new opportunities for people who are willing to hang in there.
That's wise. Last question, self-awareness. I'm beginning to realize, I think for a large part of my life, self-awareness was an enemy, and they were out to get me, and they don't have my best intent in mind. And now self-awareness is my best ally, my greatest friend, my confidant. Like, anything you've learned in self-awareness and how to become more self-aware?
Oh man, well, humility and vulnerability are at the core of that. And I think it's so weird, because when it's like, hey, you keep coming back to Jesus. It's like, yeah, because he's the source of all of this. Yeah. But it's like, and I love C.S. Lewis, his quote, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking about yourself less. And that humility is just based in truth. So when and somebody else said, humility is saying there is a God and I'm not him. And so if I'm not God, then I should know everything about myself, both the good and celebrate that, and the bad and acknowledge that, and not be ashamed of it, but know about it. So I think it's really just going, the only thing worse than the fear of self-knowledge is the realization that you've been pretending. So I look back at my career and wish I had been completely self-knowledgeable throughout it. But I got to go, hey, I didn't know, now I do. I can be vulnerable enough to go, I was kind of a jerk there, or in that moment, or I was kind of self-delusional there. God doesn't make us so we could say, hey, look, when I was 45, I became perfect. You are going to be 58 one day. I'll be 78 one day, and I'll go, oh my gosh, another thing I didn't realize. So I think sometimes we think, when am I going to be done with this?
Did you ever have a moment where it caught up on you, or surprised you, or someone helped you and it was not well received from your end, as far as like, yeah, maybe don't, anything like that?
Oh, yeah. And
that's like,
and some of them I can't tell you about, because I'm sure at the time I didn't even know I was doing it. But then and by the way, this going back to this wounds thing, once I realized the wounds, then I was like, oh crap, no wonder I reacted that way. And I have to give myself the grace of knowing I didn't know any better then, but I do now.
Well, friends, I hope you were encouraged and challenged and inspired by today's conversation. Before we close, I need to thank our amazing guest, Pat. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. More than that, thanks for being the awesome person you are. Thanks to our partners, Vern Eide and the International Justice Mission, who helped make this episode of the conversation possible. Please go find out more about them. Lastly, but not leastly, thanks to all of you who listen to the conversation. I am so grateful for you. Have a great rest of your day.